Hey guys, these are our notes for the Law of Cosines. We did Law of Sines on Monday. Today we're doing the Law of Cosines. Get out a piece of paper and put your title at the top. Notes 3.2.2, Law of Cosines. You don't have to write down the essential question. It's in our digital notebook, but you want to be able to recite the Law of Cosines, know what kind of triangles it's used for, and know how to set it up. So start off by writing Law of Cosines, draw a non-right triangle because that's what kind of triangles it's used for. Part of our essential question, we're dealing with non-right triangles. So if you guys recall when we did the Law of Sines, the, the sides of your triangle are usually, or are labeled with lowercase letters. So my sides of my triangle are lowercase a, b, and c. The only angle that we're going to be really worried about, though, for the law of cosines is angle C. So here's the law of cosines. So it's a little formula we need to remember. It is little c squared equals little a squared plus little b squared, which should look familiar to you because that is the Pythagorean theorem, but this is not a right triangle, so we can't use the Pythagorean theorem. So it's minus 2ab cosine of capital C. So the only capital letter in the whole thing is this one capital letter right here. Everything else is a lowercase a, b, or c. Okay, so what you're going to do to find a missing side is you just want to make sure that the angle either that you're given or the angle you're trying to find, and you label it as capital C. Across from that is lowercase c, and then you plug your pieces into your formula and solve. So just make sure the angle and side across are labeled C, no matter what the original problem gave us. You plug in the pieces, to the formula and solve. Just a little key reminder that if you're trying to find an angle, you're going to have to use an inverse. So remember that cosine inverse cancels cosine. So this is all the notes part we're going to take. Now we're going to jump into the examples. We're going to skip example 1 for this lesson because it's just the proof of the law of cosines. If you want me to prove it to you, feel free to come to office hours. We can go over it. But we're going to jump right into using it. I already told you guys what it was. We're going to do 3 examples. This is on your workbook, or in your workbook on page 66. And our example number 2 says, given the diagram of triangle DEF, find the length of side F. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so notice how they gave us a triangle not labeled ABC. That's okay. That part doesn't matter. What you want to do is the only angle that's given. So notice how there's 3 angles. There's only one of them is given. There's 29 degrees right here. The only one. I'm going to go ahead. It doesn't matter what it was originally called. I'm going to call that capital C because the angles are labeled as capitals. Across from capital C then, I'm going to call this little c. And then that means that these 2 pieces are little a and little b. It doesn't matter which one is which. All right, I'm going to plug these into my formula and solve. So we're going to write out the formula as a reminder. Little c squared equals little a squared plus little b squared, that's Pythagorean theorem, minus 2ab cosine capital C. So we need to memorize this formula. So when I plug in my pieces, right, little c is actually f, so f squared equals little a is 15, little b is 9, minus 2 times little a is 15 times little b is 9 times the cosine of capital C, which is 29 degrees. So notice how it has this little symbol. That means in our calculator, we are going to be in degree mode. I'm going to go ahead and plug all of this into my calculator. So if you are finding the missing side, you can type all of this into the calculator. So I'm going to just use Desmo, so you can type it all in, let it do all the work for you. So download the app, go to it online. I do want to make sure I'm in degree mode. The angle is given in degrees, so that's what we're going to use. So it's however the problem gives it to you, that's what you need to use. All right, so it's 15 squared plus 9 squared minus 2 times 15 times 9 times the cosine of 29 degrees. And we get 69.8526790724. And we are not at the answer yet, right? Okay, we're not at the answer yet. So that's what f squared equals. F squared was 69.8526790724. That's f squared. That's this side squared. So in order to get just the side f, we need to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. That will give us our little f. That's the side we're trying to find. So when I take the square root, I use my Desmos calculator. I don't know if there's a way to get like that answer in, but I think I could probably put parentheses around the whole thing and then just put a square root symbol on the outside. See if that works. Oops. That didn't work. Maybe if I highlight the whole thing. Guess I should have tried this before. I'll just type it in. So 69.8526790724. So I get 8.357915. It didn't tell it. Oh no, in the problem it did tell us to round to the nearest tenth. That's one decimal place. So if it says 8.35, you have to decide, is the 3 going to stay or round up? Since there's a 5 after it, that means it's going to round up to 8.4. Since it's a side we're finding, we use whatever the other sides were, and they were given in feet. Okay, so that's example number 2. So you have some homework problems or you're finding a missing side, and you can just make Desmos do all the hard work for you. All right, example number 3 says, given the triangle of LMN, find the measure of angle L in radians. Okay, so it doesn't give us any of the angles. It wants us to find angle L. So it's this angle right here. So automatically, whatever angle you're trying to find, whatever angle is given, you're going to cross that off and just call it capital C. Across from capital C would be lowercase c. That means that these pieces are A and B. So whatever angle is given, automatically call it C, or whatever angle you're trying to find, automatically call it C, and then label across from that's little c, and then we have A and B. All right, so when we're setting up our law of cosines, okay, our law of cosines is little c squared equals little a squared plus little b squared minus 2 times a times b times cosine capital C. This problem specifically says in radians, so that's the mode that we need to be in for our calculator. We need to be in radian mode because that's what they tell us. So I'm going to plug in my pieces. So little c was 8, little a is 6, little b is 5, minus 2 times little a is 6, times little b is 5, cosine capital C, that's L, that's what we're trying to find. Okay, so for this one, we cannot just plug it straight into our calculator. We have more work that we have to do. We cannot just plug it straight into our calculator. So first step is we're going to move our squareds over. I'm not even going to write down like what they are squared. I'm going to let Desmos do it, and I'm going to just move my squareds over. And then I'm going to multiply these pieces together in front of cosine. So we're going to do 2 things in our calculator right now. We're going to add these up, and then we're going to multiply these 3 things together. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in our calculator right now, is we are going to add these up and multiply these together. So I'm going to use Desmos. You guys can see what I'm doing. So I'm doing 8 squared minus 6 squared minus 5 squared. So that side's going to say 3. And then the other side was negative 2. I don't know if I can use this. Negative 2 times 6 times 5. I guess I could have done that one in my head. Negative 60. Okay, so on the left side, oops. On the left side, I got 3. I got 3 equals, I multiplied those three things together, got negative 60, and then I have cosine L. Kind of ran out of room on my paper, but it's okay. So now I have to get cosine L by itself. So I have to undo this multiplying by negative 60. So a common mistake is that people will add that to the other side. You have to divide both sides by negative 60. Then I don't even have to like actually divide it. I have 3 divided by negative 60 equals cosine of capital L. My goal is to find what L is. So what we have to do to get rid of cosine is take the inverse. So I take cosine inverse of both sides. It cancels, so I get L by itself, and then this I'm going to type into my calculator. And this right here, I don't know if you can read it very well, but it says cosine inverse. It looks like cosine to the power of negative 1. The way we read it is cosine inverse. So I'm going to type that into my calculator. It was radian mode because the problem told me specifically we're in radians. And then I take cosine inverse of 3 divided by negative 60. I technically could have moved the negative to the top, but it told me to round, didn't tell me where to round, so I'm going to go to the 100th. So it'd be 1.62 for angle L. So angle L was 1.62 radians. And that's my answer. I'm just going to do a different color so it stands out. So 1.62 radians. That's angle L. Okay, so to recap, the difference between example 2 and example 3 is that example 2, you are finding a side. Okay, so when you were finding a side, we used the calculator, we pretty much just typed it all in, took the square root, it was easy. With example 3, we were finding an angle, and when you're finding an angle, you have more work you have to do. You have to subtract the squareds over, multiply the pieces in front of your cosine, divide by what was in front of cosine, and then take the inverse. Okay, we have one last example. It says, given the diagram of XYZ, solve the triangle by finding the missing sides and angles. So if you're ever working on a problem and it says solve the triangle, that means it wants you to find all sides and all angles. Okay, so there's 3 sides and 3 angles in a triangle. They gave us, let's see, they gave us 2 sides and they gave us an angle. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about earlier was you don't have to worry about ambiguous case with law of cosines, because this is a side and angle, but the angle is in between, so it's an SAS triangle, so it doesn't spell the bad word. All right, so let's start us off. So what we're going to do first is go ahead and find the side, because they gave us 2 sides, so we're going to find that missing side. There's only one angle, so automatically I go ahead and I just call that capital C. Across from capital C is then lowercase c. That means we have little a and little b. Okay, law of cosines. We're writing it down every time we use it so we can commit it to memory. So little c squared equals little a squared plus little b squared minus 2 little a times little b times cosine of capital C. Now I'm going to plug in all of my pieces. So little c is z. That's what I'm trying to find. Little a is 14, little b is 10, minus 2 times 14 times 10. Cosine capital C is 86 degrees. So since it has this little symbol right here, that means I'm in degree mode. So when I use my calculator, I'm going to be in degree mode. So I get z equals, and then this is the one I could just use the calculator for. I'm going to type that whole thing into Desmos. Get rid of all these ones. Remember, I'm in degree mode because that's how they gave it to us. So I have 14 squared plus 10 squared minus 2 times 14 times 10 times the cosine of 86 degrees. I'm in degree mode, right? Okay, so I get 276.4681, all of this big thing. And we'll write that down. 276.468187. Was it like 352 or something like that? All right, then in order to get z, which is one of the sides, we just have to take the square root and that will give us side Z, and it's going to be in meters because that's what the other ones were. So in Desmos, I'm going to take the square root. There's got to be a way to like type that answer. 8, 7, 3, 5, 2. I get 16.6. 27 doesn't tell me where to round. We're just going to go one decimal place. We'll do 16.6. Since there's a 2 after, it will stay. So we're going to do 16.6 meters. So side Z. Since this problem said solve the triangle, we now have all 3 sides, right? So that's good. We've done that. But we only have one angle. So we need to go find the other 2 angles. So we can either find X or we can find Y. It does not matter which one. I'm going to go ahead and find X. Okay, so now I'm going to find X. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to relabel my triangle. Okay, this X I'm now going to call capital C. Cross this one off. Across from capital C would be little c. That means that these 2 pieces are little a, and that one was already little b, so I'm going to leave it like that. So all I did is I changed what I labeled them. Okay, they're still the same pieces, I just changed what I called them. So again, I'm going to use the same formula. C squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine of angle C. So now that I've changed it, I'm going to use the new ones that I changed. So little c is now 14. Little a is now 16.6. Little b is 10. Minus 2 times 16.6 times 10 times the cosine of x. That's what I'm trying to find, is the cosine of x. That's what I called C. So now that we're finding an angle, okay, the variable is in the angle spot. We can't just plug the whole thing into the calculator, okay? This is one where you have to subtract. I forgot my squared on my 16.6. You have to go ahead and subtract your squared. So subtract 16.6 squared minus 10 squared. Okay, we cancel those. We're going to use our calculator. We're going to add these up, and then we're going to multiply these 3 things in front of cosine x. Okay, so I'm going to subtract those and then multiply all those things. So what was it? 16.6 squared minus, no. Sorry, 14 squared minus 16.6 squared minus 10 squared. So that side's going to be negative 179.56. And then I'll multiply my negative 2 times 16.6 times 10. And that side gives me negative 332. Okay, so that was what's on the left and what's on the right. So I have negative 179.56 equals negative 332 cosine x. So here's where a mistake is easily made. So maybe write yourself a little note or do something. You have to divide by the number that's in front of cosine. You don't add or subtract it over, you divide. You will, if you try to add it over, if you ever get like a error when you're doing your cosine inverse, that's probably because you added or subtracted instead of dividing it. Okay, so in my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and divide that. That's going to give me cosine of x, and then we have to find what x is. So negative 179.56 divided by negative 332. And we get this 179.54, all this long thing. Okay, so we're going to write that out. So we got 0.5408437349 maybe, I don't know, is equal to cosine x. Well, we're trying to find x right now, so the way that we get x broken away from the cosine is we have to take the cosine inverse of both sides. So it crosses off so we can get angle x by itself, and we're just going to take the cosine of this whole thing. So in my calculator, I make sure I'm in degree mode because that's how the other angle was given. The other angle is in degrees, so this angle is going to be in degrees as well. I do cosine inverse, and then I just type in that decimal. I get 57.2589. It didn't tell us where to round. We're going to round to the nearest whole number. So our angle is going to be 57 degrees. If the problem tells you where to round, make sure you pay attention to that and round that way. But this one didn't tell us where to. So I did whole angle, 10th for the side. So this angle right here is 57 degrees. All right, now we still have all three sides, right? But we only have 2 of the 3 angles. So we have one more angle to find. So we don't want to have to do the law of cosines again. We don't want to have to do all of this work. So instead, we're going to use the fact that we know that the 3 angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So 86 plus 57 plus angle y equals 180. We're just going to go ahead and solve it that way. So if we subtract both of these from the 180, we will get our angle y instead of having to do law of cosines again. So don't need to worry about what mode I'm in. You're not using the sine or cosine button or anything, but the original problem's in degrees. So we get angle y, when I subtract 86 and 57, is 37 degrees. So to recap, if it ever says solve the triangle, that means it wants you to find all 3 sides and all 3 angles. They gave, first we found the missing side right here. Okay, so we found that missing side, did the law of cosines. Then we found one of the angles. It could have found either one. We found x, doing all this work down here. And then we found our last angle by just knowing that they added up to 180 rather than doing the law of cosines again. So where this is going to go into your notebook, the notes section, or notes part is going to go on slide 17. And then 66 and 67 are going to go on slide 18. Here's your table of contents as well if you didn't open it or you didn't write it down earlier. Your homework tonight is on page 71, numbers 1 through 7. All the problems should be law of cosines. All right, thanks.